3-2-1. Bologna have sucked.
I was actually in Bologna this summer and some of their fans were so excited. This was like better than winning a trophy for them, getting in the Champions League. And
it's a new year. I'm supposed to be full of optimism, but these injuries, these shoddy performances, some of these refereeing decisions I've seen, it's been bogus. Hello and welcome back to the Squawker Predictor podcast. This is going to be episode 7. Unfortunately, I'm not the handsome James, but it's me, Rimedi, and we're going to be previewing every single big match on match day 7 of the Champions League. I'm joined by Squawker's football expert, Dean. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, I mean, don't know about expert, but if you want to call me the expert, Rimedi, then that's fine by me.
It's okay. Not everyone can be the oracle. So the first match we're going to be reviewing is going to be Monaco versus Aston Villa. Dean, you have 60 seconds to review the match. Your time starts now.
Aston Villa are sitting pretty in the Champions League at the moment with 13 points from their first 6 games, and their opponents on match day 7, Monaco, are in a pretty strong position for a top 24 position as well. As seen in that defeat to Arsenal last time out though, Monaco are quite compact and quite narrow when they're defending, and that can lead to some joy on the wings for their opponents. And although I've waxed lyrical about the likes of Yuri Tielemans and Morgan Rogers in these previous podcasts, this game could be one for Leon Bailey to shine. He's not exactly hit the heights so far this season, especially in the Champions League. In 4 games, he's yet to take a shot on target, register an assist, and has only completed 3 take-ons, whereas in this game, I think he might be able to step up and hurt Monaco here. I said when Villa played Juventus recently that a draw would suit both teams, and that game ended up 0-0. I think the same again here. A draw will do both teams just fine, but I think there'll be some goals. I'm going to go for 1-1.
Okay, 1-1's a good prediction. Do you feel that Aston Villa have enough in the tank to qualify in the automatic spots, or do you think it may be a playoff thing?
Well, it's Celtic that they've got after this, and I know we've liked what Celtic have done, especially James, in this league phase. But yeah, Villa should beat Celtic at home, even if they lose in Monaco. I think they've got enough. Yeah, like I said, I think this will be a slightly different game for them because a lot of the way that they play has been focused through those kind of central players, whereas in this one they might have to get a little bit wider. But yeah, I think Villa can be really happy with what they've done so far.
I think what's a really interesting thing about this entire match day is that teams could bolster their ranks with January transfer signings. So do you think Aston Villa can probably get in a winger?
Yeah, well, they've been linked quite heavily, haven't they, with Daniel Marlon from Dortmund. And yeah, like I said, Bailey's not really hit the heights this season. He only scored his first Premier League goal of the season recently against Leicester. So Marlon could offer something different. I don't know if he'll be in time for this game. I'm sure Villa fans will be hoping so, though. So, remember your first game, we've got Atletico versus Bayer Leverkusen. You've got 60 seconds starting now.
I think Atletico this season have been Europe's elite team. They're coming off an 11-game winning run, and they face Bayer Leverkusen, who sit pretty in the top 8 of the Champions League so far. Look, this is going to be a tough game. There's 2 opposing styles. It's going to be Diego Simeone, once again, we know exactly how he plays, versus Xabi Alonso's high-pressing system. But for me, Atletico this season at the Wanda Metropolitano or the Stadio Civitas, whatever they call it these days, I think Atletico are going to pick up the dub. I think this season so far, Griezmann and Julian Alvarez have struck up a really beautiful connection, especially on the transition where Bayer Leverkusen slightly may struggle in defending. But I think when you have the likes of Florian Wirtz and Jeremy Frimpong, who are insanely electric on the transition, I think Atletico will pick up this game, but it won't go scoreless for Leverkusen. It's going to be 2-1.
Interesting. Yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting game. Like you say, a clash of styles, as you can see from the comparison matrix here. And Atletico have got, I think, probably better success rate in sort of those one-to-one sort of stats, tackles and take-ons and things like that. And they're also much more clinical, as you can see there. And we've recently added some historical stats to the comparison matrix. We're going back 10 years now for people who want to go on and compare teams. But what do you think's kind of gone wrong for Leverkusen this season? It's not been a bad season by any stretch, but obviously compared to the heights they hit last year, is this what we kind of should have expected from them this year?
To be fair, it's really hard to live up to an unbeaten season in domestic competitions. They lost 1 game in the entirety of the season. So look, I think obviously this season is coming back to potentially where we see them as a club. They're still really well placed to potentially win the Bundesliga this season. But I think this is just a revert to type, which is probably what we've seen across all teams this season.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think if this season had come before last season, we'd be saying what a great season Leverkusen were having, right? So, yeah, that'll be a really interesting game, I think.
I think so too.
Next game to preview is Benfica versus Barcelona. This one's one for me, so starting in 3, 2, 1. Barcelona have been excellent in the Champions League this season, despite some of their struggles in La Liga and despite that ongoing issue regarding Dani Olmo's registration. However, I've spoke about Rafinha so many times on this podcast in the past. For me, he has been the player of the tournament so far. 6 goals, only Robert Lewandowski scored more, but he's also ranking 3rd for shots, 3rd for chances created, and he's even averaging 1.5 tackles per game as well. Even if they lose Olmo, Barca have got so much creativity in the squad. 10 different players have registered an assist for them in the Champions League this season. That's more than any other team. And in Benfica, they'll come up against one of the most enigmatic teams in Europe. You never really know what you're going to get in terms of the level of performance, but you do know you're going to come up against one of the more combative teams in the Champions League. They rank in the top 5 for tackles won and aerial duels won, and 1st for interceptions. I can see this going similar to their defeat to Bayern Munich, and I can see Barcelona grinding out a 1-0 win.
So with Barcelona this season, with all of the circus antics going on, do you think this could be a distraction, or potentially there's been talks of Barcelona kind of reverting back to where they were in terms of their financial situation? So do you think Barcelona can get someone in? Do you think Benfica could really trouble them from that point of view?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of getting someone in, who knows? Yeah, is the answer, isn't it? It's definitely been a distraction in La Liga. I think that much is evident, but they've saved the best performances for the Champions League so far. You know what? I'm going to go out on a limb. I think Barca might win the Champions League this year. I know there's a lot going on around them, but there's just so much depth in that squad, and players that are not playing every week come in and seem to perform, particularly in these games. Like I say, 10 different players have got an assist, including some players that are not even in the starting 11 most weeks. So, yeah, don't sleep on Barcelona is what I'm saying already.
To be fair, in La Liga, they've been found out slightly, but in the Champions League, I don't think teams are stopping them. And another team that has been found out slightly in the Bundesliga is Borussia Dortmund, who travel to Bologna in the next match day, which I will be reviewing in 3, 2, 1. Bologna have sucked. Unfortunately, Bologna fans, you might kill me, but you guys haven't shown a good account of yourselves so far in the Champions League. You only sit on 4 points and you sit in 33rd place. I think potentially qualifying for the next phase will be very, very unlikely for Bologna. On the flip side, we talk about Dortmund, who haven't really had the best season so far in the Bundesliga. I believe they sit 8th at the time of recording. And they come into the Champions League fresh off a winter break, fresh off potentially resting, which kind of can affect Dortmund in both ways. But so far in the Champions League, we've spoken about the likes of Jamie Gittins, Julian Brandt as well, who've been amazing so far in the Champions League. But I think Bologna, they may stifle Dortmund in some ways. Obviously, Bologna, they're really good at blocking central access, where Dortmund really, really want to attack. And when you have Dortmund's high pressing system under Nuri Sahin, I think it will be a clash of two styles. But for me, I think Dortmund win 2-0.
Interesting, yeah. Bologna, I don't really know what's gone on there. Obviously, they lost the manager and players in the summer. And I was actually in Bologna this summer, and some of their fans were so excited. This was better than winning a trophy for them, getting in the Champions League. And one player they kept telling me to watch out for was Giovanni Fabian. And he's been rubbish, if we're being honest. He's completed less than 14 passes per game, no assists, playing as an attacking midfielder. And Bologna just haven't had that control in games, have they? Whereas Dortmund, yeah, they love the chaos. So this could be an insane game, really.
I think so too. And I also feel that, as an Arsenal fan, we will be coming on to Arsenal later. I just think Jamie Gittins, he's unbelievable this season. I think if we could poach him from Dortmund, please sell him to us. But yeah, he's been great this season. Your shout has been really good.
Yeah, I know you wanted to shout him out as well, but I beat you to it. But one other team who I'm sure would love to sign Jamie Gittins is Liverpool. And next up in the Champions League, they've got Lille. I'm going to be previewing that in 3, 2, 1. Liverpool have been imperious in the Champions League this season, and a big part of that has been their defensive strength. Against Girona, Alisson Becker became only the second Liverpool goalkeeper to keep 21 clean sheets, equaling Pepe Reina's record. And another big part of Liverpool's defensive solidity has been the impressive performances of Ryan Gravenberch in a deeper role than maybe many expected when he signed for Liverpool. He's made a competition high 16 interceptions in midfield so far this season. Lille are the next opponents, and they've actually been very good in the Champions League. They beat both Madrid teams. However, the XG stats suggest they may be overperforming slightly. They've scored 10 goals from an XG of just 7.83, whereas they've only conceded 7 from an XG conceded of 10.31. I don't think that kind of level of performance is sustainable in the long term, and certainly not against this absolute juggernaut of a Liverpool team. Even if Arne Slot decides to rest some players, I think Liverpool will win this comfortably. I'm going 2-0.
Just how impressive has Arne Slot been in his first season at Liverpool? There's talks on social media that Arteta, and we will move on to Arsenal in the next game. There's been talks on social media, Arteta's had all these years, and Arne Slot has come in and he's been the best manager in the league. He's guided Liverpool to a first place position so far this season. So how impressive has he been?
Yeah, very impressive. I think a key difference obviously there is Arne Slot was inheriting a team that were already so close, I think. And to be honest, I think they probably will feel disappointed that they didn't challenge more last season and Klopp's last season. But yeah, it's so good. So many times that they've just found that extra element of control like we've spoken about that was perhaps missing towards the end with Klopp. And although there have been a few performances in the Premier League of late where people might, like yourself might think, oh, there's maybe a chink in the armour there. No, I think Liverpool have been fantastic, and Arne Slot deserves all the credit that's coming his way.
So speaking of Arsenal, we are previewing the next game. It's going to be Arsenal versus Dinamo Zagreb. And I'm going to preview this in 3, 2, 1. Arsenal, you guys have broken me. It's a new year. I'm supposed to be full of optimism, but these injuries, these shoddy performances, some of these refereeing decisions I've seen, it's been bogus. But I think that Dinamo Zagreb is going to be, I believe, the last of a run of home fixtures where we're facing Newcastle, Manchester United, Tottenham, Aston Villa, and obviously Dinamo Zagreb end the 5-game run. And I think this game, at the time of recording, it is quite a while away. We do have a lot of games before then, but I think Arsenal will come out on top. I think so far this season, defensively, Arsenal have still been there. Obviously, we have been relying on set pieces more often than not, especially in the more recent games. But I feel that so far, it's one of those games in the Champions League where Arsenal control most of the game. Look, Dinamo Zagreb, I don't want to disrespect them because they are still in the top 24 when it comes to qualifying. They picked up 8 points, but Arsenal come out on top. I think Arsenal win 2-0 with an opening goal from Martin Odegaard.
Interesting. Yeah, I think Arsenal, it's been sort of an up and down season, it's fair to say so far. But are there any players in particular that you think really need to step up as we now head towards the knockout stages for Arsenal that perhaps haven't quite hit the heights so far? I
think the biggest one is our captain, Martin Odegaard. Like a lot of Arsenal fans, they slate me because I am of the opinion that Martin Odegaard is a great midfielder, but he doesn't have that quality where he can just pick the game up from the scruff of the neck. And I just feel that we need that at the moment. Saka's out. Maybe till March, maybe till April, and we need the captain's performances. I think so far this season, I don't think it's been his best season so far in an Arsenal shirt. He's had his injuries. He's just become a father, and a lot of Arsenal fans are asking for him to find a nanny so that they can look after the child and Odegaard can focus on his performances. But yeah, Odegaard, I say maybe Gabriel Jesus, Gabriel Martinelli, they've not had good seasons so far, and we need that. We need something this season. Hopefully by then we would have signed a forward, and if not, I don't know. Yeah.
Do you think there's any chance that maybe Saka being out for a while could play into Arsenal's hands? Like if they're still in the Champions League, he's played so much football, it could be an opportunity for him to actually get some much needed rest going into those final few weeks.
Absolutely. But we just have to hope and pray that we're in the Champions League. We're still firing. We haven't faced any big juggernauts. We've hopefully qualified in the top 8. So yeah, it'll be a long-awaited return for Bukayo Saka, and I already miss him.
So Arsenal potentially a Champions League winning candidate, but one team who will feel they also have a chance of winning the Champions League this year is Bayern Munich. And next up, they play Feyenoord. I'm going to preview that in 60 seconds, starting now. Bayern have bounced back so well in the Champions League since losing to Barcelona, winning their last 3 games, and they now have the highest XG scored of any team in the Champions League. I know Rimedi has waxed lyrical about Michael Elise, and he saved his best performance to the last game against Shakhtar Donetsk. 2 goals, 1 assist, 6 take-ons completed. He was absolutely fantastic in that game, and he started to typify Kompany's desire for control blended with flair, and that control for Bayern has come in the shape of possession. In 2024, they averaged more than 100 passes more under Kompany than they previously had done under Tuchel. Against Feyenoord, they come up against a very interesting threat. Feyenoord have been having some success against high defensive lines, as we saw in their fantastic comeback against Manchester City, and that has been a problem for Bayern at times this season. So I do think the home team can get maybe more than 1 goal here, but Bayern's incredible quality in front of goal will shine through. I'm going to go for an absolute goal fest, 2-5.
Wow. Well, I don't know how much that will return you, but in that situation, how do you feel about Bayern's chances so far in the Champions League this season? Obviously, they've had some wobbles against Barcelona, against Aston Villa, but how do you feel going into the latter rounds? Do you think Bayern Munich have it in them to really cause a dent in the competition?
No. And the reason is that high line, to be honest, because although they have definitely improved with that, and both the centre-backs have definitely started to get to grips with playing with each other more, against that stronger opposition, I don't think it's in Kompany's nature to then take a slightly more conservative step backwards. And I think that'll see them come unstuck against some of the better teams in the competition. I think, like I say, I think Feyenoord can breach it in this game. And I think that will be the one thing that holds them back. But going forward, there is so much quality there, as we've spoken about so many times, haven't we?
For sure. And we've spoken about Bayern Munich, and now we move on to another potential winner of the Champions League in Manchester City, who travel to the Parc des Princes, where they face PSG. And I'm going to preview this game starting in 3, 2, 1. Both teams need to win. If there's ever a game where both teams need to win, it's this one, because both teams are in serious danger of not qualifying for the next round of the Champions League. PSG actually sit outside of the top 24, and Manchester City sit 22nd at the time of recording. At the moment, these teams need to win, and I think PSG need the win more. When it comes to PSG so far this season, they've had really bad luck when it's come to the game. We've spoken about it in the first couple of episodes. PSG's run in the Champions League is very, very difficult. They've had to travel to Arsenal, they've had to play Man City and a bunch of other really strong teams so far this season. And I think this may be the game where they can get their first scalp. Manchester City, whilst at the time of recording, they've picked up some points. And yes, there is a lot of football to be played up until when this game happens. I think PSG can hurt Man City on the transition. Bradley Barcola is really good. When you have the likes of Kolo Muani, who could be leaving in the January transfer window, and Vlahovic could be replacing him, I think PSG get the win 2-1.
Oh, that is a huge call, because that would leave Man City in a real, in the mire, I guess, going into that last game. But yeah, you've mentioned there, it's a bit of a must-win for both teams. I'd say probably even more so for PSG, because they've got Stuttgart away on the last game, and they're on 7 points as well, so they've still got a chance of going through. Yeah, do you feel like either team that doesn't win this, is there a chance they could go out?
I think more so PSG, because if PSG don't win this, it's done for me. If Man City, they don't win, I think they can probably get a result on the last match day. But I think this is just a tough match. I think these two teams are probably the biggest disappointments so far in the Champions League. But yeah, I think this is a must-win for PSG. It's a home game. The fans can get up. The fans can go wild in the game. And I just think PSG need to get this. That's why I predicted the scoreline.
Nice, yeah. It's just a case of scoring goals, isn't it, for PSG? That's been the problem all the way through the Champions League phase.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's take a look at all 8 of our predictions for Matchday 7 in the Champions League phase then. Starting with Monaco versus Aston Villa, I'm going to go for 1-1. Rimedi Atletico versus Leverkusen.
I think 2-1 Atletico.
I'm going to go for Benfica to lose 1-0 to Barcelona. How about Bologna versus Dortmund?
I think Dortmund win 2-0.
I'm going for Liverpool to beat Lille 2-0. Arsenal Zagreb.
2-0 Arsenal.
Feyenoord versus Bayern. I'm going to go for an absolute goal fest, as we heard. 5-2 to Bayern. And finally, PSG versus Man City.
2-1 PSG. Right, that's it for episode 7 of the Scorecard Predictor podcast. Now, we've gone through all of the predictions. Let us know down below in the comments what you think is going to happen in these games next week. I've been Rimedi. I've been joined by the lovely and wonderful Dean, and we'll see you very, very soon for episode 8 of the Scorecard Predictor podcast. Take care.